That morning, no one expected a single act of defiance to change military history. What began as routine training became a moment every soldier on base would remember, and one that would test the difference between following orders and doing what's right. The sun hung low over Coronado Naval Base, casting long shadows across the obstacle course where SEAL Team 7 assembled at 500 hours. The air carried the sharp tang of salt from the Pacific, mingling with the faint diesel hum of idling Humvees. Petty Officer First Class Elena Vasquez stood at attention in her desert camouflage utilities, her boots planted firmly in the damp sand. At 34, she was one of the few women to earn the trident. Her face etched with the quiet discipline of someone who had logged thousands of miles in the surf and surf zone. Beside her, Rex, her Belgian Malinois K9 partner, sat rigid, his black mask alert, ears pricked to the cadence of the chief's commands. "Platoon, attention!" barked Master Chief Harlan Reyes, his voice cutting through the morning mist like a KA bar. The team snapped to, 40 operators forming a precise grid under the floodlights. Reyes paced the front, his eyes scanning for any lapse in formation. "Today we run the confidence course twice. No excuses, no shortcuts. Vasquez, your dog's on point for scent work after the breach sim. Keep it tight." "Aye, Master Chief," Elena replied, her tone even, betraying none of the fatigue from last night's quals. She placed a gloved hand on Rex's harness, feeling the steady rise and fall of his flanks. Their bond was unspoken, forged in the dim glow of helo insertions and the silent nights of Overwatch. Rex had detected IEDs in Helmand that saved her squad twice. In return, she was his shield, his command. No words needed, just the subtle pressure of her fingers on his collar. A signal he read like orders from command. The routine was the backbone of their world. Reveille at dawn, PT until the body screamed, then briefings in the ops tent where maps unrolled like classified scrolls. Elena thrived in it. She avoided the spotlight, turning down embeds with journalists and skipping the morale-boosting photo ops that littered base life. Cameras felt like vulnerabilities, exposures in a life built on shadows. Her file noted it dryly. Operator Vasquez prefers operational focus over public engagement. It wasn't shyness, it was survival. In a unit where every glance measured weakness, she let her work speak. Flawless dives, unerring patrols with Rex. As the platoon moved out, boots thudding in sync on the gravel path, the first whispers of disruption rippled through the ranks. A new addition to the support staff, Lieutenant Commander Ellis Grant, had arrived from Naval Special Warfare Command the week prior. Tall and polished, with a clipboard always in hand, Grant was tasked with enhancing unit visibility for recruitment drives. He lingered at the course's edge now, flanked by a civilian photographer named Torres, who fiddled with a DSLR under the guise of documenting training evolutions. "Keep it natural," Grant instructed Torres, his voice carrying over the wind. "We're building the narrative. SEALs as the unbreakable line. Vasquez's profile is gold. First female handler in the team's rotation. Get some shots of her and the dog in action." Elena caught the exchange mid-stride, her jaw tightening imperceptibly. She quickened her pace, Rex matching her without a tug on the lead. The course began, low crawls under razor wire, their uniforms scraping against the coarse sand, the metallic scrape of carabiners on ropes. Sweat beaded on her brow, but she pushed through, Rex navigating the tunnels beside her with predatory grace. At the rappel tower, she clipped in, the harness biting into her shoulders as she descended the 40-foot drop, wind whipping her ponytail free. Halfway through the second run, the violation came swift and unannounced. As Eleanor and Rex cleared the breach house sim, a mock-up of sun-baked adobe with pop-up targets, Torres stepped into the frame without clearance. Flash popping like gunfire, he circled them, lens trained on Elena's face, mid-command to Rex. "Search clear!" The dog froze, hackles rising at the intrusion, a low growl vibrating through his chest. Elena's hand shot to his muzzle, steadying him, but her eyes locked on Torres. "Stand down," she said sharply, voice low but firm, as if addressing a recruit. "This is live training. Clear the hot zone." Torres hesitated, glancing at Grant, who waved him on from the perimeter. "It's protocol, Petty Officer. Command wants visuals for the reel. Just a few more. Smile for the folks back home." The words landed like a misfired round. Elena's pulse quickened, not from exertion, but from the breach of protocol. SEAL training wasn't a photo shoot. It was precision, trust, the edge where hesitation killed. Rex shifted uneasily, sensing her tension, his nose twitching toward the unfamiliar scent of the intruder's cologne. Around them, the platoon paused at the next station, eyes flicking over. Petty Officer Ramirez murmuring to his swim buddy, the chief's brow furrowing from afar. She had a choice: obey the chain, let the camera roll, preserve the hierarchy, or enforce the sanctity of the op, risk the command's ire. Elena's mind raced through the regs. OPSEC guidelines forbade unsecured imagery during active evals, especially with K9 assets like Rex, whose tactics were classified. But Grant's orders came from higher, a push for modern outreach in an era of viral videos and shrinking budgets. "Negative," she stated, stepping between Torres and Rex, her body a barrier. "No cameras inside the wire until cleared by the OIC. That's the rule." Torres lowered the lens, but Grant strode forward, his face reddening under the bill of his cover. "Vasquez, this is a direct request from Nestdalos. Stand aside." The platoon watched now, the morning drill grinding to a halt. Reyes approached, radio crackling on his belt with incoming queries from the tower. Elena met Grant's gaze, her hand steady on Rex's lead. In that suspended moment, the base's rigid order teetered, duty to command clashing with the conscience that had kept her and her team alive. She thought of the boy she'd met once, off base, during a rare liberty, wide-eyed, clutching a toy trucker, asking why she didn't pose for pictures like the heroes on TV. "Because some fights aren't for show," she'd said then, walking away. But here, under the watching eyes, defiance took root. "With respect, sir," she replied, voice carrying clear, "this fight is." The words hung in the salt-laced air, rippling outward like a shockwave. Reyes cleared his throat, stepping in. "Lieutenant Commander, let's take this to the briefing room. Training resumes." But the damage was done. The act visible, witnesses everywhere, the first crack in the facade of unbroken protocol. Elena felt Rex lean against her leg, a silent anchor as the team reformed, the hum of helicopters overhead underscoring the shift. What started as a routine morning had become something more, a test of loyalty, not just to orders, but to the quiet truths that bound them all. The briefing tent smelled of stale coffee and canvas, the kind of scent that clung to uniforms after too many all-nighters. Master Chief Reyes held the flap open, his broad frame blocking the midday sun, as Elena followed Lieutenant Commander Grant inside, Rex at her heel with a soft click of nails on the plywood floor. The air inside was cooler, laced with the faint ozone hum of the projector warming up on the folding table. Charts of the confidence course, pinned to the walls, fluttered slightly from a distant fan, mapping out every breach point and rappel line like veins in a tactical body. "Take a seat, Petty Officer," Reyes said, his voice level, gesturing to the metal chairs arranged in a semicircle. Grant settled first, his clipboard balanced on his knee, while Torres waited outside, camera bags slung over his shoulder like an unwelcome guest. Elena sat, Rex curling at her feet, his head resting against her boot, a quiet claim of territory in the confined space. She could feel the warmth of him through her laces, a reminder that this wasn't just about her. It was about the trust that let him detect threats humans missed. Reyes closed the flap and leaned against the table, arms crossed over his chest plate. "Lieutenant Commander, you want to start? This is your evolution." Grant nodded, his tie slightly askew from the morning's haste, a rarity in his otherwise starched appearance. "Appreciate it, Chief. Vasquez, what happened out there? was a direct interference with command directives. NSWW is pushing for increased visibility to support recruitment. Your team's assets, including the K9 unit, are part of that package. Denying access mid-training undermines the mission. Elena kept her posture straight, hands folded in her lap, the leather of her gloves creaking faintly. She met Grant's eyes without flinching, the way she would in a stare-down with a hostile sentry. "Sir, the denial was for safety and OPSEC. Torres entered the hot zone without OIC approval. Rex reacted, growled at the flash. In a real op, that distraction could cost lives. Regs are clear, no unsecured imagery during active evals." Grant's pen tapped against his clipboard, a rhythmic tick that echoed in the tense stillness. Regs can be flexible for outreach. This isn't the sandbox, it's Coronado. We're selling the SEAL ethos to the next generation. Discipline, unbreakable bonds like yours with the dog. A few photos don't compromise that. The words stirred something deep, a flicker of memory Elena usually kept locked away. Last year, during a brief shore leave in San Diego, she'd stopped at a park to let Rex stretch his legs. A boy, no older than 10, had approached hesitantly, his baseball cap pulled low over eyes wide with awe. He clutched a dog-eared magazine featuring SEAL handlers, the cover splashed with glossy action shots. "Ma'am, are you one of them? Can I get a picture? Just for me, not for anyone else." His voice had been small, earnest, like he was asking for a secret. Elena had paused, the weight of her avoidance pressing in, the cameras that turned warriors into posters, stripping away the shadows where real work happened. "Not today, kid," she'd said gently, ruffling Rex's ears instead. "But watch how he moves. That's the real story." The boy had nodded, but the disappointment lingered in his gaze, a mirror to the doubts she carried about her own visibility. Now, in the tent, that memory surfaced unbidden, sharpening her resolve. Rex shifted, his nose nudging her ankle, sensing the subtle tension in her frame. She placed a hand on his head, fingers threading through the coarse fur, a gesture of reassurance, both for him and herself. With respect, "Sir," she said, "the ethos isn't sold, it's earned. Rex isn't a prop. His training is classified for a reason. If a photo leaks patterns in his search, it endangers the whole unit." Reyes cleared his throat, interjecting before Grant could respond. "Petty officer's got a point. I've seen K9 ops go south from less, but Lieutenant Commander, this visibility push comes from the top. Brass wants reels for social, shows the human side, draws in diverse recruits. Vasquez, you're an asset here, female operator, proven handler. They specifically flagged your profile." The room felt smaller then, the weight of institutional eyes pressing in from afar. Elena's mind raced through the chain, from Reyes to the CO, up to Ness Dallas command. Obeying meant swallowing the intrusion, letting the cameras erode the edges of their world. But defiance? That could ripple, reprimands, sidelined rotations, whispers of insubordination in her fitness reports. Her career, built on silent excellence, teetered on this exchange. Yet conscience pulled harder, the same force that had her diving into surf zones to retrieve a wounded teammate. Orders be damned in the heat of it. Grant leaned forward, voice softening a fraction, as if negotiating with a recruit. "Look, Elena, may I call you that? We're on the same team. One photo op after Qualls, controlled environment. You set the boundaries with the dog. It could inspire someone, show what a woman's SEAL brings to the table." She hesitated, the offer dangling like a faulty carabiner. Inspiration. The boy's face flashed again, his plea simple and pure. What if this was the moment to bridge her shadows with light? But no, the line was protocol, the trust with Rex. "Sir, I appreciate the intent, but until it's cleared through OPSEC review, I can't comply, not with my partner involved." The silence stretched, broken only by the distant thump of a helo lifting off from the pad. Reyes exchanged a glance with Grant, his expression unreadable. "We'll escalate this to the CO. Vasquez, stand by for debrief. Lieutenant Commander, let's review the footage Torres got, see if it's salvageable without the breach." As they rose, Grant's face tightened, the clipboard snapping shut. "This isn't over, Petty Officer. Visibility is part of the duty now." He exited first, the flap slapping behind him. Elena exhaled slowly, kneeling to check Rex's harness, her fingers tracing the familiar stitching. The dog's eyes met hers, steady and unwavering, a bond forged beyond words or lenses. Outside, the platoon had dispersed to chow, but murmurs carried on the wind, Ramirez's low voice to another. Vasquez shut it down cold. About time someone did. The act was spreading, witnesses turning it into base law, the first threads of a reckoning pulling taut. In the ops world, defiance wasn't just personal. It tested the system itself. Elena clipped Rex's lead, stepping into the sunlight, the salt breeze cooling her skin. She knew investigations would follow, queries from command, perhaps a formal inquiry. But as Rex trotted beside her, tail low and alert, she felt the quiet strength of choice. Duty demanded obedience, but morality whispered of legacies built on truth, not frames. The morning's routine had fractured, and in the cracks, something vital stirred, a reminder that even in rigid ranks, conscience could command. The afternoon sun beat down on the asphalt parade deck, turning the blacktop into a shimmering haze that distorted the ranks of assembled personnel. Eleanor stood at ease near the edge of the formation, Rex sitting precisely at her left boot, his flanks rising and falling in measured rhythm. The base loudspeaker crackled intermittently, summoning units for a snap inspection ordered by the commanding officer, Captain Harlan Thorpe, a veteran of Anbar, whose no-nonsense briefings could silence a room faster than a flashbang. Whispers from the morning's standoff had already filtered through the chow line and PT sessions, but here, under the scrutiny of flags snapping in the breeze, discipline held like a locked breach. Thorpe arrived in an unmarked SUV, its tires crunching gravel as it pulled up to the reviewing stand. He stepped out, cover tucked under his arm, his utilities crisp despite the heat. Flanked by his XO and a pair of JAG reps in khakis, he scanned the platoon with eyes that missed nothing, the faint scuff on a boot, the subtle shift in posture. "At ease," he called, his voice carrying over the hum of distant generators. "This isn't a full muster. We're addressing an incident from this morning's training evolution. Petty Officer Vasquez, front and center." Elena's pulse steadied as she double-timed forward, Rex matching her stride without command, his leash loose in her gloved hand. The deck's heat seeped through her soles, a reminder to keep her bearing square. She halted 5 paces from Thorpe, saluting sharply. "Petty Officer First Class Vasquez, reporting as ordered, sir." "Acknowledge," Thorpe replied, returning the salute. His gaze flicked to Rex, then back to her face, assessing without judgment. "Master Chief Reyes briefed me. Lieutenant Commander Grant filed a preliminary report, insubordination, during a sanctioned documentation op. Your side?" "Sir," Elena began, her voice clear and clipped, "I enforced OPSEC protocols. Unauthorized entry into the hot zone compromised the K9 search parameters." Rex's response was instinctual. The flash disrupted his focus. "I stood down the photographer to protect unit integrity." The XO shifted, notepad in hand, while the JAG officer, a wiry lieutenant with wire-rimmed glasses, jotted notes. Around them, the platoon maintained parade rest. But eyes darted. Ramirez's jaw set firm, a nod of solidarity from the team's demolitions expert. The air thickened with the scent of heated tar and sea spray, undercut by the faint, acrid tang of Rex's alert pheromones, his body reading the tension like an incoming threat. Thorpe nodded once, turning to Grant, who stood off to the side, arms folded. "Lieutenant Commander, your account." Grant stepped forward, his polished shoes gleaming against the deck. "Captain, this was a low-risk evolution for recruitment materials. Vasquez's refusal halted progress and set a poor example. NS Idalus needs these assets visible, her profile specifically, as a trailblazer. Denying access questions the chain." Murmurs rippled through the ranks then, soft but audible, like radiostatic breaking protocol. Thorpe raised a hand, silencing them. "Enough, this isn't a courtroom, yet. But it will be if it escalates. Visibility serves the mission, but so does operational security. Vasquez, you aware of the directive from command?" "Affirmative, sir," she replied, chin level. "However, regs under UCMJ Article 92 prioritize mission safety over ancillary tasks. Rex's capabilities are sensitive. Exposure risks pattern analysis by adversaries." The captain's expression remained granite, but a flicker crossed his eyes, recognition of the bind. He'd seen handlers like her in the field, dogs saving lives in the blind spots of human intel. "Understood. Stand by." He turned to the JAG rep. "Lieutenant, preliminary findings." The officer cleared his throat. The sound amplified in the open space. "No immediate violation on Vasquez's part, sir, but the refusal could be construed as undermining a lawful order if the outreach was properly authorized. Recommend a full inquiry, interviews with witnesses, review of footage." Thorpe absorbed it, then addressed the platoon directly, his voice projecting like a briefing in the tent. "Listen up. This base runs on trust. In the chain, in each other, in the tools that keep us alive. K9 units aren't props, they're operators. But the Navy's evolving. Public support funds our gear, our rotations. Balance is key." He paused, eyes locking on Elena. "Petty officer, your record's clean, exemplary. But this tests more than one team. Dismissed to quarters. Inquiry starts 800 tomorrow." As the formation broke, boots scuffing in disciplined retreat, the reckoning unfolded in fragments. Ramirez clapped Elena's shoulder lightly as they passed. Protocol be damned in the moment. A silent affirmation. "Held the line, Vasquez." Whispers turned to low conversations in the barracks. "Grant's pushing too hard," one operator said over MRE wrappers. "She's right about the dog." By evening, the story had reached the chow hall, where a cluster of support staff, cooks, mechanics, overheard and carried it to the admin block. Torres, nursing a coffee in the corner, deleted a few frames from his drive, the weight of the morning's breach settling in. Elena retreated to the K9 kennel, a low-slung building ringed by chain link and floodlights. The interior was cool, shadowed, alive with the soft pants of other handlers' partners. She unclipped Rex's harness, running a brush through his coat in long, methodical strokes. The bristles whispered against his fur, releasing the faint, earthy scent of wet dog from the morning's dew. "Good boy," she murmured, her voice the only softness in her day. He leaned into her touch, eyes half closed, the bond a tether amid the storm. Outside, the base stirred with the inquiry's shadow. Grant met with the XO in the CO's outer office, voices muffled through the door. "She needs to comply, or it's a fitness report hit." Thorpe listened from his desk, maps of upcoming rotations spread before him, weighing the institutional ripple. A female SEAL handler defying for protocol. It could spotlight cracks in the visibility push, draw eyes from DC. Congressional queries, media embeds sniffing for drama. Night fell with the precision of a blackout curtain, stars pricking the sky over the Pacific. Elena lay on her rack, Rex curled at the foot, his warmth a steady pulse. Sleep evaded her, thoughts circling the boy's face from the park, now intertwined with the platoon's gaze. Her defiance wasn't rebellion, it was guardianship. For Rex. For the shadows that defined their work. But as the clock ticked toward dawn, she sensed the expansion. This wasn't contained to one tent or deck. Witnesses had multiplied, the act etching into base memory, forcing the system to confront its own orders. In the quiet hours, a junior handler knocked softly on her door. Vasquez. TO's aide just radioed. Full tribunal tomorrow. Witnesses from the platoon. She nodded, the weight settling like a ruck. Courage under scrutiny wasn't flashy. It was this, the steady breath before the next command, loyalty tested in the glare of consequence. Rex stirred, nose to her hand, as if to say, "We're in it together." The reform's seeds were sown, invisible yet insistent, promising a legacy beyond the lens. Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories of courage and integrity can reach. The tribunal room in the base's administrative annex was a stark box of cinder-block walls, painted the institutional grey of forgotten gear lockers. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the long oak table where Captain Thorpe presided, his hands folded over a stack of redacted reports. The air conditioner hummed steadily, circulating the faint metallic scent of polished brass and fresh ink from the JAG files. Elena entered at precisely 0800, Rex on a short lead at her side, his paws silent on the linoleum floor. She wore her service dress blues, the ribbons on her chest, catching the light like distant signal flares, marks of deployments she never spoke of. "Petty Officer Vasquez, take your seat," Thorpe directed, his voice even, gesturing to the chair opposite the panel. Beside him sat the XO, Lieutenant Commander Grant, and the JAG lieutenant from the previous day, now joined by a senior enlisted advisor from Naval Special Warfare's K-9 program, Master Chief Lena Ortiz, a compact woman with salt-and-pepper hair pulled into a tight bun, her eyes sharp as a handler's whistle. Witnesses waited in the antechamber, Master Chief Reyes, Petty Officer Ramirez, and Torres the photographer, their presence turning the private inquiry into a public ledger. Elena sat, Rex settling at her feet with a soft exhale, his head tilting to scan the room's unfamiliar scents, coffee grounds from Thorpe's mug, the starch in Grant's khakis. She kept her gaze forward, posture impeccable, the weight of her blues a familiar armor. This wasn't combat. It was the battlefield of bureaucracy, where words were rounds and silence, a tactical pause. Thorpe opened the proceedings with a nod to the recorder, a yeoman clicking keys on a laptop. This informal tribunal reviews the incident of 14th October during SEAL Team 7's confidence course evolution. Allegations: insubordination by Petty Officer Vasquez in denying access to authorized documentation personnel. Lieutenant Commander Grant, present your case. Grant rose, adjusting his cover before speaking, his tone measured but edged with the frustration of a stalled mission. "Captain, the outreach directive stems from Nestov Command's fiscal year guidance, Directive 2023-045. It mandates visual assets for recruitment, targeting diverse demographics. Vasquez's unit, including her K-9 partner, was flagged for inclusion. Her refusal disrupted operations, modeling resistance to lawful orders. Torres had clearance. The hot zone was simulated, not live fire." The XO interjected briefly, flipping through a binder. "Footage confirms the entry. No immediate threat, but the halt cost 30 minutes of training time." Elena listened, her fingers resting lightly on Rex's collar, feeling the steady thrum of his pulse, a counterpoint to the room's tension. When Thorpe turned to her, she responded without notes, her voice steady as a sitrep. "Sir, my actions aligned with OPSEC Regulation 32 CFR 2001, unauthorized imagery during K-9 evals risks exposing search algorithms. Rex's response to the flash, growl, freeze was a valid alert. In the field, that saved lives. Protocol demands OIC sign-off. None was given." Ortiz leaned forward then, her advisor's patch gleaming on her sleeve. Petty Officer, elaborate on the K9 bond. How does intrusion affect operational efficacy? Elena met her eyes, the question pulling at the core of her world. Ma'am, Rex and I train as a unit. Distractions erode trust. He's detected anomalies in zero-vis, odors humans miss. A camera's unpredictability, like that flash, mimics a threat. Degrading his focus degrades the mission. The first witness, Reyes, was called. He entered with the measured stride of a chief who'd walked 100 inquiries, saluting before taking the stand, a folding chair angled to the panel. "Master Chief, your observations?" Thorpe asked. Reyes's response was clipped, professional. Vasquez enforced the wire. Torres crossed without my nod. The platoon saw it. Disruption clear. Her call protected the Evo. Grant's push overlooked the risks. Ramirez followed, his young face set in the earnest lines of a fresh Qualls grad. Under oath, he recounted the moment. The pop of the flash, Rex's low rumble carrying over the breach Sim's echoes, Elena's body blocking the lens like a human shield. It wasn't defiance, sir. It was ops. We all felt it, the break in rhythm. Torres, last, fidgeted with his hands, the civilian in a sea of uniforms. "I had orders," he said, voice tight. "But yeah, the dog reacted. I didn't clear the zone properly. My bad." Grant's jaw tightened at that, the admission a chink in his armor. As the witnesses filed out, the room grew heavier, the AC's drone underscoring the pause. Thorpe reviewed notes, then addressed Elena directly. "Petty Officer, your avoidance of media is noted in your evals. Consistent, not flagged as issue until now. Why the hard line here?" She hesitated a beat, the memory of the boy surfacing again, unbidden. Not the park encounter, but a deeper thread. Her own childhood in a border town, watching her father, a retired Marine, shrink from the cameras after Vietnam, his stories locked away. "Sir, visibility can commodify the work. Rex isn't for show, he's for the shadows. But if it's controlled, post-review, I can engage for the right reasons." Grant shifted, surprise flickering across his face. Ortiz nodded subtly, a handler recognizing the pivot. Thorpe steepled his fingers. "This tribunal finds no UCMJ violation. Cautionary note, balance outreach with security. Lieutenant Commander, revise protocols. K9 OPS require dual sign-off. Vasquez, your input on a controlled photo session, post-inquiry." The gavel's tap, metaphorical in this setting, closed the session. Elena rose, saluting, Rex mirroring her rise with fluid grace. Outside, the antechamber buzzed with low voices, Ramirez murmuring approval, Reyes clapping her back lightly. Word spread fast, through the galley, the motor pool, even to the adjacent Marine detachment. By noon, the admin yeoman overheard a radio call to Nest WHQ. Vasquez case resolved, highlights K9 protocols, potential for positive spin. Elena walked Rex back to the kennel under a sky thickening with coastal clouds, the salt wind tugging at her blues. The reckoning had unfolded not in shouts, but in testimonies, each word a ripple through the chain. Grant caught up briefly at the path's fork, his tone conciliatory. "Didn't expect the witnesses to back you so solid. Let's set that session, your terms." She nodded. The concession a small victory, but the cost lingered. The exposure she dodged for years now inching closer. In the kennel, as she filled Rex's bowl with kibble, the dry crunch echoing softly, she reflected on the boy's plea. Just for him. Perhaps one photo, vetted and true, could honor that without betraying the shadows. The institution bent slightly. A quiet reform in the wake of her stand. Protocols tightened, handlers consulted, but the true test loomed, stepping into the light, not as a symbol, but as herself. Afternoon PT resumed with a subdued energy, the platoon running the course again, boots pounding gravel in renewed sync. Elena felt the shift in glances, respect edged with curiosity. Her defiance hadn't shattered order, it refined it. A reminder that conscience voiced in the right forum could command change. Rex trotted beside her at cool down, nose to the wind, as if scenting the path ahead. Scrutiny yielding to strength, loyalty enduring beyond the frame. The coastal fog rolled in thick that evening, muting the floodlights around the K9 training yard and turning the chain-link fence into a hazy grid. Elena knelt on the dew-damp grass, her utilities streaked with the day's grit, as she adjusted Rex's vest for a low-light scent drill. The Belgian Malinois' eyes gleamed in the dimness, his body taut and ready, responding to the subtle shift in her posture rather than any spoken cue. The tribunal's verdict lingered in her mind like residual static on a radio, cleared but with strings attached. A controlled photo session, her terms, to bridge the visibility gap. It felt like a compromise, etched in pencil, erasable if the wind shifted. "Easy, boy," she murmured, clipping a fresh article to his harness, a scrap of fabric laced with the faint, engineered odor of explosives residue. Rex nosed it once, committing the scent to memory, then sat alert, waiting for her signal. Their routine was a sanctuary amid the base's undercurrents, the soft click of the timer, the measured paces across the yard, his precise sits at hidden caches. No cameras here, just the quiet rhythm of trust, honed over years of insertions where human senses failed. Footsteps approached from the path, measured, unhurried. Eleanor glanced up to see Master Chief Ortiz from the tribunal, her silhouette cutting through the mist like a patrol boat's beam. The senior handler carried a thermos in one hand, her other tucked into her pocket, the posture of someone who'd walked 1,000 kennels. "Mind if I join? Got some ground to cover on that session." Elena rose, wiping her hands on her trousers, Rex shifting to flank her instinctively. "Ma'am, always room for K9 talk." She gestured to the bench by the fence, a weathered slab where handlers often debriefed after EVOS. Ortiz settled, unscrewing the thermos to pour steaming coffee into a tin mug. Black, no sugar, the aroma cutting the fog's chill. "Captain's briefing me on the follow-through," Ortiz began, handing Elena the mug. Her voice was gravel rough, earned from years commanding units in the Hindu Kush. "Grant's team wants it tomorrow, post-PT. Controlled, no hot zone, just you and the dog in the yard. Torres on a leash himself, metaphorical, but it's a step. Your stand yesterday? It's got brass rethinking the push. NCAA's circulating a memo, K9 protocols in outreach." Elena took a sip, the heat grounding her. The coffee was bitter, like the taste of exposure she'd avoided since BUDS, when a recruit photographer had snapped her mid-Hell week, the image buried in archives but never forgotten. "Appreciate the heads-up, Chief. It's not the photo, it's the why. Rex detects what we can't. Turning him into a poster risks that edge." Ortiz nodded, her eyes on Rex as he paced the yard's perimeter, nose low to the ground. "Seen it before? Handlers get protective, rightly so. My first Malinois back in 05 saved a platoon from a secondary in Fallujah. After command wanted embeds, I pushed back, got sidelined for a rotation. But it stuck. Policy tweak on classified assets. Your case? It's louder. Witnesses, tribunal. Female operator holding the line, that's legacy material." The word hung between them, heavy as a ruck. Legacy. Elena had built hers in silence. Flawless quals. Rotations where Rex's alerts pulled teams from ambushes without fanfare. But the boy's face intruded again, not just the park encounter, but a deeper echo. During a rare family visit to base, her nephew, 8 and wide-eyed, had tugged her sleeve after seeing a recruitment poster. "Aunt Elena, why no pictures of you? You're the hero." She'd deflected with a pat on his head, but the question burrowed, a crack in her armor. Now, with the tribunal's eyes behind her, perhaps one image, vetted, purposeful, could answer that without surrender. Rex returned then, dropping the article at her feet with a soft woof, his tail a low wag of success. Elena praised him with a firm scratch behind the ears, feeling the vibration of his contentment. Good find. To Ortiz. If it's for inspiration, like showing the bond, not the flash, I'll do it. But on our ground, no intrusions. Agreed, Ortiz replied, rising as the fog thinned, revealing the distant glow of barracks lights. I'll sit in, ensure it's clean. This could mentor the juniors, teach 'em conscience in the chain. She clapped Elena's shoulder lightly, a rare gesture in their world of salutes and nods, then melted back into the mist. Alone again, Elena ran the drill twice more, the yard's shadows lengthening as night deepened. Rex moved like an extension of her will, his alerts precise amid the scattered decoys. But her mind wandered to the session ahead. Torres's lens, Grant's watchful gaze, the platoon possibly orbiting the edges. Defiance had cleared the hurdle, but this was the next test. Stepping forward without losing the shadows, she clipped Rex's lead, heading to quarters, the gravel crunching under their boots in sync. Dawn broke with the sharp crack of reveille over the PA, pulling the platoon from racks into the chill air. PT was brutal as always. Ocean swims where waves battered like enemy fire. Then the grinder's endless circuits of pull-ups and ammo lifts. Elena pushed through, Rex waiting at the sidelines with a handler aid, his ears perked to her labored breaths. Sweat stung her eyes, but the rhythm steadied her, discipline as antidote to doubt. By 1,000, the yard was prepped, barriers set to cordon the photo zone, a single cache for a staged search to show Rex's work without secrets. Grant arrived with Torres, the photographer subdued, his DSLR slung low. "Petty officer," Grant said, saluting crisply. "Your call on setup. Ortiz is en route." Elena nodded, positioning Rex at heel. "Start with basics. Sit, stay, basic commands. No flash, natural light, then a short search. Keep it surface." Torres adjusted his settings. The camera's shutter a soft whir as he tested. Rex eyed it warily, but Elena's hand on his collar steadied him, their bond a silent override. Ortiz arrived mid-setup, directing from the fence. "Frame the trust, not the drama." The first shots captured Elena signaling Rex through a simple patrol, his fluid turns, her gloved hand guiding without force. No smiles, just the quiet focus of operators at work, the salt wind ruffling fur, boots firm in the sand. Torres worked efficiently, respecting the boundaries, his earlier breach a ghost in his careful angles. As they wrapped the search demo, Rex alerting cleanly to the hidden article, Grant stepped closer, reviewing a preview on the screen. "This is solid, humanizes the unit without compromise." A small crowd had gathered at the yard's edge, Ramirez and a few juniors, drawn by the murmurs, watching without intrusion. One nodded approval, the subtle affirmation rippling through. But the moral pull tightened then, unexpected. Torres lowered the camera, glancing at Elena. "One more? Personal? Like you and the dog, off-duty vibe?" It echoed the boy's request, pure and unforced. She paused, conscience flickering, exposure for inspiration, or another veil lifted. Rex leaned against her leg, sensing the hesitation. "All right," she said finally, voice low. "One. Just us." She knelt, Rex's head against her shoulder, the shot framing their bond in the soft morning light. No props, no poses. The shutter clicked once, capturing the vulnerability beneath the discipline. A handler's quiet pride, a dog's unwavering loyalty. As Torres packed up, Ortiz pulled Elena aside. "That last one's gold. Could go in the handbook. Show the heart of it." Grant overheard, his expression softening. "Vasquez, this sets precedent. Thanks for bending." She watched them leave, the yard emptying, Rex trotting beside her toward the kennel. The act wasn't defiance now, but bridge building, conscience guiding the light without blinding the shadows. Whispers spread through Chow. Saw the shots, real, not staged. Ramirez cornered her later over trays of chow. Proud of you. Shows the team's got soul. By evening, the images circulated internally, vetted files for recruitment briefs highlighting K9 integrity. NSW's memo landed in inboxes, revised protocols, handlers in the loop. Elena brushed Rex in the kennel, the routine a balm, as the base's rhythm absorbed the change. Her avoidance had cracked, not broken, in its place a legacy of measured visibility, inspiring without erasure. The boy's plea, long unanswered, found echo in the frame, proof that courage could illuminate, one controlled click at a time. The hum of the base's generators provided a constant undercurrent as Eleanor made her way to the briefing tent the following morning, Rex's lead loose in her hand. The air was crisp, with the promise of another overcast day. The Pacific's fog clinging to the low-lying structures like a reluctant shroud. Her utilities felt heavier than usual, the fabric still carrying the faint scent of yesterday's yard, damp earth and Rex's fur after the photo session. The images had been uploaded to a secure server overnight, vetted by OPSEC before distribution to NSW's recruitment arm. Whispers about them had already threaded through the morning chow line. Vasquez finally showed face. One handler said to another over trays of scrambled eggs and black coffee, it wasn't mockery, it was acknowledgement, the kind that built quiet respect in a world of measured words. Inside the tent, the projector screen glowed with preliminary drafts of the recruitment reel, a montage of SEAL evolutions, now punctuated by clips from Torres's shots. Captain Thorpe stood at the head of the table, his silhouette sharp against the canvas walls, flanked by Grant and Ortiz. The team filtered in behind Elena, Reyes with his ever-present notepad, Ramirez and a handful of juniors claiming seats on the metal benches. Rex settled at her feet under the table, his nose twitching toward the scent of marker ink from the dry erase board, where Thorpe had sketched a simple flowchart. Protocol, visibility, mission, impact. "Morning, team," Thorpe began, his voice cutting through the low murmur of settling chairs. "We're reviewing the outreach evolution from yesterday. Petty Officer Vasquez's input was key. The results are in." He clicked the remote, and the screen filled with the first frame. Elena and Rex in the yard, her gloved hand signaling a command. His form alert and poised. No flash, no intrusion, just the raw discipline of their partnership, captured in natural light, filtering through the coastal haze. Grant cleared his throat, leaning forward. "These assets exceed expectations. The personal shot, the one with you kneeling, dog at shoulder, it's resonating in prelim feedback from HQ. Shows the human element without compromising tactics. Recruitment metrics project a 15% uptick in female inquiries for the next cycle." Elena kept her expression neutral, eyes on the screen as the reel transitioned to a wider shot of the platoon running the confidence course, boots sinking on gravel paths. The moral tension from the tribunal lingered, a subtle pull in her chest. This visibility she'd resisted now serving the unit. Yet it chipped at the autonomy she'd guarded like a classified file. Rex nudged her boot, a soft pressure that grounded her, reminding her of the bond that had prompted the concession. The boy's earnest request echoed faintly. Just for him? Now multiplied into something institutional, a bridge she'd helped build. Ortiz spoke next, her tone practical as she passed around printed stills. From a K9 perspective, these frames honor the work. No exposure of search patterns. Focus on the trust. Handlers across Nest Dallos are getting looped in. Your stand prompted the memo. Dual sign-off mandatory for any media near assets. It's reform, Petty Officer. Quiet but real. The juniors leaned in, Ramirez flipping through the prints with a nod of approval. One, a fresh-faced petty officer named Hale, raised a hand tentatively. "Ma'am, sir, does this mean more sessions? Like for morale or recruits?" Thorpe fielded it evenly. Controlled only. Vasquez sets the template. Operator input first. This isn't about spectacle. It's sustainment. The Navy's ranks need eyes on the ground, diverse ones. Her example shows how. As the briefing wrapped, the team dispersed into the morning's routine. Quals in the surf zone, where waves crashed with rhythmic fury, salt spray stinging exposed skin. Elena and Rex joined the K9 rotation, navigating mock breaches in the low-tide muck, his alerts precise amid the churn of foam and seaweed. The water's chill seeped through her wetsuit, but the focus sharpened her, defiance resolved into purpose. The photos, a tool rather than a threat. Yet vulnerability crept in during the quiet moments. Drying off in the gear locker, she caught her reflection in a fogged mirror, the lines around her eyes softened by exhaustion. For years, avoidance had been her shield. Now, stepping forward felt like shedding it piece by piece. By midday, the ripple effects surfaced in unexpected ways. During lunch in the galley, a vast space echoing with the clatter of trays and the sizzle of grill stations, a young sailor from admin approached her table, where she sat with Reyes and Rex curled beneath. He was slight, barely out of A school, his uniform starched but his posture hesitant. Petty Officer Vasquez saw the reel preview on the internal net. My little brother, he's 10, wants to be a handler. That photo with the dog, he printed it off a shared drive, said it made him believe girls can do it too. He slid a folded note across the table, scribbled in childish block letters. Thanks for the picture. Rex is cool. Tommy. Elena's fingers paused on her fork, the weight of the words settling like wet sand. Not her nephew, not the park boy from memory, but another face in the vast network of those inspired from afar. She unfolded it fully, the paper crinkling softly, Rex lifting his head to sniff the edge curiously. Reyes glanced over, his expression unreadable, but approving. Legacy starting early, he said quietly, forking into his rations. The afternoon brought a formal nod from command, an email from NSW HQ CC'd to the team, praising the Vasquez protocol for balancing security and outreach. Grant stopped her en route to the kennel, his earlier rigidity softened by the outcomes. You were right to push back. This version, it's stronger because of it. If you're open, a follow-up session next month, mentorship angle with juniors. She considered it, hands steady on Rex's lead as they walked the gravel path, the sun piercing the thinning fog to warm the ground. If it stays controlled, sir, for the ones watching, like that kid. The concession felt earned now, morality aligning with duty, the rigid system flexing without fracture. Evening fell with the precision of a scheduled blackout drill, lights dimming across the base as handlers secured the kennels. Elena brushed Rex in the shadowed enclosure, the bristles gliding through his coat with familiar rhythm, releasing the day's scents, ocean brine, yard dirt, the faint trace of printer ink from the stills. He leaned into her touch, eyes half-lidded in contentment, their bond a constant amid the evolving world. Outside, the platoon gathered informally around a fire pit near the barracks, protocol allowing a brief unwind, sharing stories over thermoses of coffee. Ramirez raised his mug in her direction. To holding the line and lighting it up right. She joined them briefly, the fire's crackle underscoring the low voices, flames dancing shadows on uniformed faces. The photos had sparked conversations, not just recruitment stats, but deeper talks of conscience in the chain, the cost of integrity when orders blurred with exposure. A junior handler confessed his own hesitations about media during quals. Ortiz, overhearing, offered guidance drawn from Elena's example. The reform expanded subtly, mentorship rotations now including visibility training, handlers like her leading the charge. As night deepened, Elena lay on her rack, Rex at the foot, his breathing a steady cadence matching the distant waves. The boy's note rested on her nightstand, a talisman of consequence. One photo, asked just for him, rippling into reform, careers influenced, the institution's legacy enriched. Her avoidance hadn't vanished, it had transformed, conscience proving that true strength emerged not in shadows alone, but in measured light. The base slept under stars, the hum of helicopters fading into silence. As Elena closed her eyes, the weight of her choices, a quiet anchor. If this story already has your respect, hit the like button. It helps the story of Elena Vasquez reach those who still believe in honor. The weeks following the recruitment session blurred into the relentless cadence of base life, where each dawn brought the sharp reveille call slicing through the fog-shrouded barracks. Elena Vasquez moved through it with the same measured precision she'd always known. Reveille PT under the floodlights, the grind of ocean swims where the Pacific's chill tested resolve. Then briefings in the ops tent where maps unrolled like classified mandates. But now a subtle shift lingered in the air, as tangible as the salt crust on her boots after a surf zone run. The Vasquez Protocol, as it had come to be called in internal memos, had taken root. K9 handlers now consulted on all media evolutions, their input a mandatory checkpoint before any lens crossed the wire. It wasn't fanfare, it was procedure, etched into the chain of command like a new standing order. Rex remained her constant, his presence a quiet counterpoint to the evolving scrutiny. In the kennel each evening, as she checked his harness and ran through low-light drills, the Belgian Malinois' steady gaze met hers without judgment. His fur, still carrying the faint brine from the yard sessions, brushed against her gloved hand during pats, a bond that needed no words, forged in the shadows of deployments where cameras never reached. Yet the photos from that morning had spread beyond the base's secure nets. Vetted stills appeared in recruitment packets distributed to A schools across the country, the image of Elena kneeling with Rex at her shoulder becoming a subtle emblem, not of spectacle but of disciplined trust. Whispers from junior sailors carried the feedback during chow. "That handler, she's why I'm pushing for quals." A ripple Elena overheard but never sought. One overcast afternoon, as the platoon wrapped a helo insertion sim in the mock village outskirts, Captain Thorpe pulled her aside near the landing zone. The rotor's whine faded to a low thrum, kicking up dust that settled on their utilities like fine grit. "Petty officer," he said, his voice pitched low over the idling engines. "HQ's taken notice. Your protocol's being piloted fleet-wide. NSWs circulating it to DevGru rotations. Saved a potential OPSEC breach in a Virginia unit last week. Their handler cited your case." He paused, eyes flicking to Rex, who sat alert at her heel, nose twitching at the diesel exhaust. "And the real? Inquiries from female applicants up 22%. You're a symbol now, whether you wanted it or not." Eleanor nodded, wiping sweat from her brow with the back of her glove, the fabric rough against her skin. Symbol. The word sat uneasily, echoing her lifelong avoidance, the way she'd sidestepped embeds in the sandbox. Turning down morale posters that turned operators into icons. But this was different. Measured, purposeful, born from conscience rather than command. "Just doing the job, sir." Rex sets the standard. Thorpe's expression softened a fraction, a rare crack in his command facade. "That's the point. Your stand reminded us the job includes the quiet parts, protecting the edge while building the line." He saluted then, crisp and brief, before striding back to the debrief tent, leaving her with the wind's low howl through the chain-link perimeter. The true measure of reform came not in memos, but in the human threads weaving through the ranks. During a rare Liberty weekend, Elena took Rex off base to a coastal trail near San Diego, the path winding through scrub oak and eucalyptus that carried the sharp, resinous scent of earth after rain. Handlers were encouraged to maintain off-duty bonds, and this was theirs. A loose lead, his paws padding softly on the packed dirt, her steps sinking without effort. The fog had lifted, revealing a sky streaked with the gold of late sun, and for the first time in years, she felt the weight of avoidance lift slightly. At a trailhead overlook where the Pacific stretched endless below, a family approached. Parents with 2 boys, the younger clutching a backpack emblazoned with a SEAL emblem sticker. The child, about 10, froze at the sight of Rex, his eyes widening behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Is that a real K9, like in the pictures?" He glanced up at Eleanor, hesitant but bold, the same earnest plea she'd fielded before. His mother smiled apologetically. "He's been obsessed since seeing that recruitment video, the one with the woman and her dog." Elena knelt to Rex's level, her utilities blending with the trail's dust, and nodded. "He's real, all right. What's your name, kid?" "Tommy," he said, voice small but steady. "Can I see him up close? Just for me?" The words landed like a familiar echo, pulling at the memory of park encounters and scribbled notes. No cameras here, no protocol, just a boy and a dog, the sea's rhythm underscoring the moment. She unclipped the lead slightly, guiding Rex forward with a soft command. "Sit!" she told the Malinois, who obeyed instantly, his tail thumping once against the ground. Tommy reached out tentatively, fingers brushing Rex's ear, the dog's head tilting into the touch with patient grace. As the family watched, Eleanor shared a brief story, not of ops, but of training. How Rex learned sense in the dim kennel light, his nose a tool sharper than any tech. Tommy listened, rapt, his questions tumbling out like unchecked radio chatter. When they parted, he hugged his backpack tighter, promising to train my own someday. Elena watched them go, the trail curving away into the scrub, feeling the quiet expansion of her choice. One photo had sparked this, a boy's inspiration, unscripted and true. Back on base, the legacy solidified in subtler ways. Master Chief Ortiz invited her to lead a mentorship session for incoming handlers, the low-slung classroom filled with fresh faces in starched utilities, their K9 partners panting softly at their feet. Elena stood at the front, Rex at heel, projector casting the vetted stills on the wall. "Visibility isn't the enemy," she told them, voice even, "but neither is the shadow. Set your terms, protect the bond." Questions followed. How to balance orders with conscience, when to speak in the chain. Ramirez, now a go-to for juniors, nodded from the back row, his presence a thread of the platoon's solidarity. Grant, too, had transformed in the wake, his outreach pushes now collaborative, looping handlers early. Over coffee in the admin block one evening, as rain pattered on the tin roof, he admitted, "Push too hard at first. Your protocol fixed that. Makes the mission stronger." Elena accepted the olive branch with a nod, the institutional justice she'd tested now a shared framework. By month's end, during a platoon formation on the parade deck, Thorpe awarded her a commendation, simple, no fanfare, for exemplary initiative in operational security and unit cohesion. The team stood at attention, boots aligned on the asphalt, the salt wind carrying the faint echo of waves. Eleanor saluted, Rex beside her, the medal's weight light on her chest. It wasn't redemption for her alone. It was for the system, the quiet reform that elevated conscience over blind order, loyalty beyond the lens. As the formation dismissed, she walked Rex to the surf zone at dusk, the horizon bleeding orange into the sea. The water lapped at their boots, cool and insistent, Rex splashing forward with a joyful bound. In that moment, transformation settled. The woman who'd avoided cameras found strength in selective light, her legacy a beacon for those watching from afar. Duty and morality once at odds, now aligned in the tide's steady pull, one handler, one dog, one indelible bond. Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage, and justice within the ranks. Thank you for watching the case of the woman SEAL avoided cameras all her life, until a boy asked for a photo just for him. See you in the next one. In the end, Elena Vasquez's quiet defiance proved that true legacy blooms not in the glare of exposure, but in the disciplined light of choices that honor the unseen.